right now on Higher Journeys Radio with Alexis Brooks.
We are lacking on this planet now loving each other, let alone loving pets. And that there is something about when you live with an animal that needs your care, I think it really keeps you in touch sort of with your soul, because you do have to be sensitive to them. And when you're sensitive to another creature with a mind, I really think it is the way you have to live.
In all of the conversations I've had with investigative reporter Linda Moulton Howe, I have never heard her like this. Though we discussed the ongoing and long-standing mystery of animal mutilations, her recent inquiry into childhood out-of-body experiences, and of course the reality of an alien presence right in our midst, this time there was a different tone in her voice, an undeniable sense of urgency and adamancy that could not be overlooked. In her nearly 4 decades of tireless and painstaking research into all things the mainstream considers non-essential to our earthly existence, Linda Moulton Howe, like myself and many of you, beg to differ. In this lucid and impassioned plea to all of humanity, Linda's message is clear and unequivocal. It is now time to remove the long-standing policies of denial and secrecy once and for all, and wake up to the larger reality that lives side by side with us each and every day. Linda, it's always wonderful to be in your company and visit with you face to face, as all of our previous interviews have been filmed on location. But I'm equally delighted that you decided to join me this time for our radio broadcast. So welcome for the first time to Higher Journeys Radio, Linda.
Well, thank you. And Alexis, I think we've had fascinating discussions in the past, and that the world right now feels like it is agitated and that things are in a revolutionary change at such a pace that right now is probably one of the better times to have a discussion about what is really going on, in spite of efforts by the politicians to keep us from knowing what is actually happening.
Well, quite an open there, and I couldn't agree with you more. Well, I have to tell you, I have been so excited. I'm going to give your YouTube channel a plug first, because I have just been thrilled to see how active your YouTube channel has become. You've got the weekly live broadcasts, along with your special guest episodes, I believe with KGRA, exclusive reports. You're really covering it end to end as only you can. And I know your very loyal following are also delighted to be able to find you every week on your Earth Files YouTube channel, so people can get the absolute latest on all the things that we're going to be touching on a couple of those things at a critical time, as you said. So, well, I love the phrase that I believe you've coined, and that's called high strangeness. We've got a lot of it. Certainly been no shortage of that these days, and I don't know if there ever was. But although I know you have been covering at great length, we're going to get into these completely anomalous animal mutilations since 1979. We've all been taking careful note, Linda, of some of the more recent and equally disturbing mutilation of cats and rabbits, along with other small animals, which is perplexing indeed. As a matter of fact, you did at least 2 of your live reports recently on your YouTube channel, which I'm going to make sure we link them up here, where you discuss some of the more recent animal mutilations in the U.S. as well as Canada and the U.K. One of them I want to bring up right at the top, and that these very disturbing string of cat mutilations in Thurston County in Washington State. What have you been able to procure additionally, if I may, since your more recent reports? Any new information there?
The cat mutilations have been going on since at least the 1980s. And it's important that people keep these correct timelines. We hear cycles of cat mutilations like right now, coming out of Olympia, Washington, the greater London region, Houston, Texas. There are other places like Austin, Falls Church, Virginia, that have had cycles of half-cat mutilations for at least 20, 30 years. And why is it that the general world audience loses track, and when they come back up in headlines, people think it's something new? It is not new. But what has been happening in the greater London region for the past 3 years and counting is the fact that the cats now, they've had more veterinarian and pathology reports than perhaps ever before because of the work of a group called Snarl. It is a neighborhood group. They banded together because there were several neighbors that lost their cats. Now, I'm going to describe briefly that we're not talking about gore. We're not talking about blood. We're talking about the opposite. This is what sets these, the small animal and the large animal of cattle and horses and pigs and goats and deer and reindeer and all of the other animals around the world, that for at least we're at the middle of the 21st century. This goes back to the first half of the 20th century. So this is a long phenomenon. But what happened around London, what has been setting it apart, is that starting in 2015 up to today and going forward, there have been over 500 studied cases. There may have been 3,000. It's the number of 500 cases studied by Snarl, studied by the Royal Society for the Protection of Animals, studied by veterinarians. And in fact, when about 2.5 weeks ago, these headlines went around the world that the UK Scotland Yard had solved the mutilated cats, and that they were saying in headlines that the perpetrator were foxes and auto roadkill. It was so preposterous. It was such an insult to all of these 500 and more people who had lost beloved cats that for Scotland Yard to be serious, going on television and putting out these notices that made it to Facebook and Twitter and to headlines around the world, that they were foxes and cars hitting cats. It was an insult to intelligence. And on top of that, for the people who were studying this, myself included, foxes have been beheaded, foxes have been cut in half, foxes have been dismembered exactly like the cats and the rabbits and a monitor lizard and a royal python snake, and that the police were not addressing the facts at all. This was an effort to get the subject off of the back of the police from the media and the public. That's what it was. And who came forward within 24 hours of the Scotland Yard headlines? It was veterinarians. Veterinarians were contacting the media. Veterinarians were going to Facebook. Veterinarians were going to tweet. Veterinarians were going to radio, and they were saying, we have investigated these half cats, beheaded cats, and dismembered cats. And we are saying it is not possible for any predator, natural predator of any kind, let alone a human, to do what they had as forensic evidence. Now, why am I saying this? Let me go to one of the characteristics in the last 3 years in the half cat, beheaded cat, dismembered cat phenomena that does include other small animals, but the cats have been the most. Why is this now emphasized by veterinarians as being tremendously unique and eerie? And this is one of the main reasons. In the past 3 years, even though for 20 some years before, there have been half cats, cats cut in half. That means the front half is found or the back half is found. Rarely are both front and back ever found at the same location. But it was the police and pathologists and animal rights people who 20 years ago were calling for the front half of the animals that were found. They referred to them as being like hand puppets. Why? Every single thing inside of the front half of the cat has been removed. There's no heart, there's no lungs, they are totally empty, and there is no blood. There is, Alexis, get this, there's no blood of any kind anywhere on the hair even around the excision site. Now, here's another important part. On the ground where the front half or the back half or a beheaded cat or a dismembered cat are found, there is not one molecule of hemoglobin anywhere on the grass, on the weeds, on the soil. That means it's exactly the same conclusion for law enforcement that goes back to the beginning of the 20th century. Law enforcement was having to deal with cattle, horses, in some cases dogs, goats, sheep, reindeer, large animals that have been found with ear, eye, tongue, jaw, genitals, rectum cord out, including internal organs that are removed inside of the bodies of mutilated large animals in which there is no surgical excision of any kind on the body of the animal, leaving veterinarians to make reports, private and secret, to law enforcement. There is no way technologically to take out organs, including the heart or the bladder or the kidney, as esophagus, have been removed inside of the large animals without excisions to the outside body. That has been reported since at least the 1960s. Now, when you come to England and what has been happening with the 500 and some cases since 2015, here is a new twist that separated everything that has been going on from even understanding how a human could do this. And this is so important to stress, given the fact that Scotland Yard 2.5 weeks ago tried to dismiss this as foxes and cars. Here is what has been in so many of the cat cases that no one had ever seen before. Now, imagine the body of a cat lying on the ground. There's no blood, there's no fluid. At the base of what would have been the neck, the head has been removed. There is no blood. Can you imagine cutting through a jugular vein?
Right, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what else has been found over and over again, and the police have tried to keep it a secret, but I've been able to talk with a lot of owners, and therefore I know that what I'm telling you is a fact. From that base of the neck, feel in your own back of your neck the knob that connects to the spine of your own back that goes down to your tailbone.
Right. Feeling it now.
Try to imagine what I'm going to say. The spine, and only the spine, excised from every rib. The spine from below the neck joint to the tailbone is lifted out, leaving the ribs and every piece of cartilage untouched.
That's an anomaly.
Oh, it's absolutely impossible to do, but it's done.
Right. Consistently. You know, you have been, thank you for that, as always, so comprehensive, and you have been meticulous yourself in looking at all the details of this. No, everything that we're all hearing right now, Linda, it is impossible to imagine, and you don't need to be a veterinarian to know, based on the way you're describing it, that this would be impossible as far as a normal animal mutilation is concerned. So the question becomes, what is going on? And even moreover, why is there this, not unusual, this state of secrecy, which would tell me that law enforcement, certain aspects on the inside, individuals know something is going on. Do you think they know? Do you think they've been able to get to the bottom of it?
Okay, jump back to September of 1979. I'm director of special projects at the CBS TV station in Denver, Colorado. My job is to do documentaries and live studio shows in cycles around the year. and I get headlines from the Denver Post and the Rocky Mountain News that summer, return of animal mutilations. I had been living in Boston and Los Angeles, and I was not aware of animal mutilations until moving to Denver to take over this office at the CBS station. So when the headline said the return of, then we're talking about a phenomenon that has occurred before, and I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And I was the manager of the department. I had the ability to use resources to go anywhere and do a program. And so I decided that what I wanted to start trying to do was to talk with sheriffs first. And my very first trip was up to Sheriff Tex Graves in Sterling, Colorado. And there he showed me 266 color Polaroids he had taken with his own Polaroid camera of mutilations going back as far as 1972 to 73. I was in his office in 79. And when I had all of these 266 Polaroids with his permission laid out on the floor so I could organize them chronologically, that always helps me. I always like to have things chronological. Then you begin to see whether there's changes or everything stays the same. And there were such huge anomalies to me. Of one of the ones that stuck out of looking at the Polaroids was so many of the animals were lying on face powder dry land, and there were no hoof marks anywhere around the mutilated body, including the animal's own hooves. And that's when Sheriff Graves said to me, as I was asking him questions about how could this possibly be? How would you have a 2,000-pound bull lying on face powder ground with an ear, eye, tongue, jaw, genitals, and rectum cord out without some signs of struggle or even the hooves of the animal getting to where it is lying down? And Sheriff Tex Graves said, well, Linda, I'll save you some time. The perpetrators of these animal mutilations are creatures from outer space. And then he proceeded to give the reasons why. These were ranchers who had seen animals being raised in beams of light from their pastures up into glowing circular objects in the sky. The sheriff, the deputies had all talked with ranchers about this. Ranchers also saw animals being lowered down in beams of light into their pasture, scaring them. But when they waited for the sun to come up, and where they saw the beam lowering the animal was bloodlessly, no tracks, mutilated in the pasture. And that led me sort of like through this Alice in Wonderland revelation that the planet was not what I thought it was, that if the sheriff was right, if extraterrestrial biological entities from someplace else in the cosmos was here on Earth, taking tissue in these patterns that repeated over and over and over again, there were two fundamental questions that Sheriff Tex Graves, he said, Linda, why, if they are creatures from outer space, and they can take them in beams of light, why would they ever bother to return the bodies? And it was that discussion with Sheriff Tex Graves in September of 1979 that I remember thinking for the first time and said to him, well, Sheriff, as I look at these Polaroids, it is as if something is flaunting the ability to put this 2,000-pound bull on this dusty ground with no tracks around it, because automatically you then have to look up into the sky and say, what could possibly be lowering this 2,000-pound bull without leaving tracks? And the sheriff said, yes, exactly. This is flaunting. This is in our faces. And then the second question that follows immediately, if we are dealing with intelligences that are not human, that are flaunting their ability to take any animal and humans at any point, What is the reason for the pattern of the excisions? In the large animals, it has always been an ear, eye, jaw, flesh, tongue, genitals, and rectum. In the smaller animals, which begins to kick in the 1980s with cats and rabbits and foxes and that size of animal, why did the cats and the rabbits and the foxes suddenly take the attention also of the mutilators in the 80s when the large animals go back before the 1960s? I have had newspapers sent to me from Alabama, like in the 1950s, an animal found isolated with an ear, eye, tongue, jaw. It's the same pattern, but in the 1950s, no one was reporting to the public about bloodless, trackless mutilations, even if they existed. It didn't kick in until the famous horse in southern Colorado, 1967 in September. And that was a horse that nobody could avoid the strangeness, because the ranchers are the ones who found their missing horse after 48 hours. It was a female. It was named Lady. It was not a male gelding named Snippy. It was a reporter's error. I talked with Burl Lewis himself on the phone from Denver about it when I was writing my first book, An Alien Harvest, and he set the record straight. And he said when they went and started looking for their missing horse, who had been his wife Nellie's favorite animal, she looked forward to the horse coming back every night. That's how they knew it was gone. They came back every night from wherever it was out in the Alamosa wildlands of their ranch for food. And when the horse didn't show up, they started going out and searching, and they found the horse lying on dusty ground. And the only tracks, including the horse's own tracks, was 100 feet away. Mm-hmm. And where they found tracks, there were none for 100 feet up to where this horse was lying, stripped of flesh from the base of the neck out. The brains had been removed. It was skeletal all the way out from the neck to the tip of the nose. The rest of the horse looked like it should get up, but a pathologist hematologist from Denver, Colorado named John Altschuler, MD, secretly, not wanting to jeopardize his job, he drove from Denver to Alamosa specifically to see what had been reported in radio and television and newspapers around the world in September of '67 about this strange horse death in southern Colorado. It's what attracted him to go down. He told me that he was there at that horse within 10 days of it being found. Nobody touched it. They left the horse exactly as it was found. Nobody touched it. During that period of time, there was not a predator that came close. The horse remained fresh. When Dr. Altschuler got there, he said, when he bent down to look and examine to the body of the horse that was attached to the skeletal neck to head, he realized that he was looking into a cavity in the chest that should have had lungs, an esophagus, heart, and it was empty. And then he did his own excision and opened up and could see that every single major organ in the chest had been removed, and said, Linda, there were no stains of hemoglobin. How do you get all of these major organs out of the chest of a horse, let alone taking all of the neck flesh and the brain, without leaving some evidence of hemoglobin? And there was none, and there was none on the ground. And that is why law enforcement knew right from the beginning, we are not dealing with predators. We are not dealing with humans.
Right. Yeah. You listen, I want to bring in a couple of things because the case, as far as I'm concerned, is made that this is not, we're not dealing with humans. Here's something I want to bring to your attention. You may be aware of, Linda, and this I'm looking at this Thurston County cat mutilation case because that's what's sort of been in front and center, even in mainstream news for a little while. You know, I wanted to see if I could possibly draw a nexus between that particular story and the frequency of UFO sightings in or around that area. And here's one headline I was able to find. It's a news story that came out in early 2017. Here's what the headline reads. It says simply, Washington State ranks among the top 5 in UFO sightings, based on an author and at the time a new book that had come out. Washington State ranks among the top 5, I would imagine maybe in the country, in UFO sightings. Now, this came from a publication called Seattle PI News. What's interesting, Linda, is when I found this article, I mean, I specifically went searching to see if I could draw a correlation. But when I found the article with the headline, the entire body of the article was grayed out, blocked out, couldn't see it.
Oh, you mean on the web?
On the web. So I found the article. I put in a few keywords to see where, as an example, Washington State, have they had a rash of UFO sightings? And that is the one headline that popped out to me. They rank among the top 5 in UFO sightings. Right. Now, we know these things are happening all over the place, but I found it curious that the body of the article that was posted accompanying the headline, we could not get to.
But do you mean that it was grayed out without any explanation whatsoever?
None. The only thing that was present was the headline. The entire, as if you could see the body of the article. There was an article there, but there were literally gray blocks blocking out all the verbiage.
You are reinforcing a great fear of mine that in this competition now between Google and Facebook and all of the webs to quote unquote get rid of trash, get rid of conspiracies, get rid of everything. We are now facing one of the biggest editing, taking out suppression. It is equivalent to what happened during the Nazis when books were burned in piles of 300 to 500 books at a time. We're doing the same thing on the web. That now things like mutilations, even though it's important news, even though it is a direct link to the question, are we alone in the universe? And the answer is no, and that we've had an alien presence on this planet for thousands of years, harvesting genetic material, which is, I think, the reason for the mutilations.
Okay.
We are now facing where there is going to be artificial, Google, Alphabet, Facebook, artificial editing in the name of what?
Secrecy.
And it's going to be political. And you and I and those of us who have actually been trying to report truth, we are going to be in jeopardy. Our work is going to be in jeopardy. And what do you do when you are living on a planet that seems hell-bent on moving to fascism everywhere so governments can control the populations?
Hear, hear. Sink or swim. It's interesting. I just had a conversation with a colleague of ours, PMH Atwater, who's a near-death researcher, and she was talking about the times that we're living in, calling it a crisis era, and that now we're moving sort of into, and I don't want to digress too much, into the area of astrology and other cosmology. But looking at this in the crisis era, she says there is no middle ground in what we're facing right now at every level. It's one extreme or the other.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And I feel like I'm in the French Resistance now, quite literally, because the one thing that I respect, and I think that the divine field that is responsible for the matter worlds respects too and tries to reinforce, is truth and facts. I think if you live in a planet that you have leaders who constantly are talking about fake news, but what they define as fake news is the opposite. It is the truth. And pretty soon, everything is being turned upside down. So those who are screaming fake news become the controllers. And those of us that are trying to report the facts, we become the enemy to those saying it's fake news. This is a dangerous time. I lived through the 60s having my back beat with a billy club in Berkeley, California, because I was there reporting, but I was with those that were protesting the Vietnam War, and we were attacked. We were attacked by the so-called political state of California. And what was the reason for the assembly? We were there protesting a war as people that are given a right to assembly to protest against their government's policies in the Constitution. And yet, not only were we hurt, remember Kent State, and that's where college students were shot down by police. Now, that happened in the 60s. I would tell you that right now, 2018 going forward in the next 10 years is as dangerous or more dangerous a time than we've ever had. And I do not see an easy way out of this fake news, political domination, take the web and strip it of anything that could possibly be considered controversial. If this continues, I don't know how the United States ever puts itself back into a republic, a democracy, a republic democracy. Mm-hmm. And I mean it. I think it's this serious.
I can feel the passion. I know everyone that's listening can, and I think many concur. We are in the paradox, dangerous, exciting, exhilarating, desperate. It's all on the table right now. Yeah. I'm going to see if I can find that article. I was quite perplexed, and I did my initial reaction when I saw it. I said, let me reload the page. Maybe it's something on my browser. But no, the headline was bold. The body of the article was missing. And yeah.
Alexis, let me tell you something really important about the Northwest. Mutilations of all kinds, Sasquatch of all kinds, UFOs of all kinds have been focused in the Northwest I think, for centuries. And that the old stories about the Sasquatch that comes in and pulls something like a log out of a farm, they've been reported for a very long time. Now, why? It is my private hypothesis that wherever you have human civilization that is near water, deep water, this is where you are going to have the confluence of an alien presence that obviously is using the 2/3 of this planet that is underwater as its way to stay separate from humanity. They obviously have the technology to go down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, 6.5 to 7 miles, and then go through the land. What better protection could you have on Earth than huge, deep oceans if you have the technology to go down, not living on the base under the water, you're going into the land, you're going into caverns that exist, and that is the most protected place on Earth, because humans, unless they have bathyspheres, and even then it's problematic, we are only on 1/3 of the Earth full time, the 2/3 of the ocean. What a perfect way for advanced technologies to cohabit planet Earth, harvest whatever they want, and we can never, ever go where they are. And so when you go to Vancouver on the Canadian side, Vancouver on the Washington side, down to Olympia, Snohomish rings in my mind with everything. Animal mutilations, Sasquatch, talking with deputies who have been able to go and investigate where, this is true, a deputy named Miller was investigating where there were 17 to 19-inch deep tracks where there were mutilations, and they were tying Sasquatch to the mutilations, to UFOs, to entities that were being seen and reported by farmers. And he said they were following these big Sasquatch tracks, and they come to a tree, and it's clearly, freshly, one big limb on the tree had been snapped off. And what was hanging there was a deer, where something strong had been able to lift the deer that it had killed by the scruff of its neck and hang the scruff of the neck hide on to the sharp part of where the branch had been snapped off. And the deputy said, I stood there thinking something had the ability to lift this heavy deer straight up to where it snapped off the branch and hung this deer. And of course, their conclusion was that whatever the Sasquatch is, it is also part of the fabric of animal mutilations and hanging a deer from, and this is very important. The broken off branch was measured. It was 14 feet from the ground.
Wow. You know, oh boy. You know, it's interesting. I'm looking at this time, Ms. Moulton Howe, and we got about 20 minutes left, and I'm going to propose something right now. Everybody out there in the Higher Journeys audience, I had planned to go into Linda's recent research on childhood OBEs, but I'm going to ask something. I'm going to put you on the spot because I think we should stay on this. Would you be willing to come back in short order and we'll devote an hour to childhood OBEs?
Not today.
Not today. But
no, we could do it. Probably I have to get through the rest of this. You have no idea what my schedule is.
Yes, I do.
November, December. But January, I am actually now, I have so many incredible, profound replies, and they just keep coming. So I know that I have touched a nerve on the childhood. I specifically ask about childhood out of body because of my own experiences as a 6-year-old and wanting to know what people who, when they were young, and there was having nothing to do with meditation or anything, these are spontaneous out of body, what do those people think was the part of them that was separating from their body? And this is where I am getting this rich, textured fabric.
You really are.
And here is the opening sentence on at least half of the emails and handwritten letters to me. Linda, I have never told a single human what I'm going to tell you now because you ask. And they say, not their family, not brothers and sisters, not a husband, not a wife, no one. And so, Alexis, what is out there in the sea of 7.2 billion humans and counting in their relationship with out-of-body, unseen human abductions that we only have the tiniest scratch in the surface of Earth history?
Let's keep on that. You can see that Linda Moulton Howe she's got a fire in her belly today. I'm going to go where we need to let this go. Let's leave. I'm going to have you back anyway. You know that because you're a frequent guest. But let's leave the mutilations and the big mystery on the table for now. Let's go ahead and transition because I think you've kind of gotten into that. Somehow all of these are connected, are they not? Somehow every single thing that you have touched in your entire career, there are no distinct lines of demarcation, Linda. One thing for sure is the mystery is ubiquitous. That I can say for sure. But let's go ahead and talk about the childhood OBEs. And I know that you have had a couple of experiences that you have shared with your audience. So if you're game, why don't we go ahead and go there?
All right. Let me start off with a question that I have posed to some colleagues of mine that I haven't posed to the public, and that is, what haunts me about living on planet Earth and my own experiences is I do not understand how the divine field could make an entire universe in which there appears to be so much evil versus light when the divine field itself seems to be trying to destroy evil wherever it is. Mm-hmm. And when you raise that fundamental existential question, it goes to the heart of what you just asked me. How can we be in a universe where even the issue of recycling of souls is politically controversial. How can we be in a universe where the challenge of understanding what is evil, the opposite of life, the opposite of love, that how can hate and destruction and decimation of life exist juxtaposed against light and life and love in the same universe? And to me, everything comes down to this of my trying to understand, how could this universe be weighted for life, which is what is one of the biggest mysteries in astrophysics. Why is this universe weighted for life? It could have gone the other direction and it would have been a self-annihilating universe. It is weighted for life, and if it is weighted for life, then our hypotheses, like Thomas Campbell, the physicist, is he getting closer when he says this entire universe is a computer simulation?
I knew we were going to go there. Absolutely. Yes.
produced specifically to be an entropy reduction trainer for souls. And it would mean then that anybody who is conscious and any soul in this universe is here because it's being trained to deal with negative and positive, evil and good. And then you come to when you're a child, when I was 6 years old. Going to bed for me was always lying on my back, waiting for this moment. I would always feel it. There would be a disconnect. Part of me was rising toward the ceiling. I was extremely aware that there was this other part where my head was on the pillow and my body on the bed. They were both feelings at the same time, and I liked the floating feeling, and I always liked getting up to this cottage cheese, that's what my mom called it, a cottage cheese sprayed ceiling, because around every piece of cottage cheese, so to speak, was the like ribbons of neon tetra fish blue, an incredibly gorgeous blue, almost a blue-green, that was surrounding all of these crevices in the cottage cheese ceiling. I have no idea. Why was the light only in the crevices? It wasn't glowing from the whole ceiling. It was just around these crevices. And I loved seeing that light. You couldn't see it from lying on the bed. You could only see it from the part that was rising up separate from my body and getting close to the cottage cheese ceiling. And then I could see this beautiful light. And I always had this desire as a young child to go into that beautiful light. And every single time there would be this firm voice, no, danger. You cannot leave your space. And then I would always find myself, no trauma, no jolt. I would just be back in my body and I would go to sleep. I never talked with my parents about it, or my brother, or anybody in my entire life until just the last 10 years. It was like, I think when I was little, I assumed everybody did this.
Yeah, a lot of people say that.
Yeah, and then to find out that this was something not common, then you say, why? Why? It's almost like you are put through training.
Yeah.
Like something was putting me through training, and yet it was so protective that whatever that no, you cannot go out. I've talked with other people now who have had the same type of experience. What is the difference between those that can split, like Robert Monroe, who wrote out of body, and they can go out into the universe? What makes their end? That's the big question. Is it the soul itself that is separating, or is it some other part of us that we have never identified? We have never been told in literature, except maybe the Egyptians, who talked about the Ka and the Ba, and they had all of these layers, 7 to 9 layers from the Egyptian point of view, made up a human being. What are those other layers?
Right. Right. Well, as far as I've heard you tell the story before about your going up to the cottage cheese, I can picture it because I think we had that ceiling at some point in our home. But going up to the ceiling and having sort of this this area of color that you were not to pass. And I thought the same thing, that look at what you're doing right now, Linda Moulton Howe. Look at what you were doing and the level of training that you needed, not just on a physical level, but on an instinctive level. Your ability to discern, you're being so meticulous in your discerning, that came from somewhere. Now, I know that there was formal training, and then there was, they call those that have had ET contact experiences and training on other planets, night school. I wouldn't be surprised if you were going to night school.
Yeah,
And
it is a fascinating question. And what is then the differentiation in a universe full of life, which I think it is, and that we're on one planet and we have arguments here, even about whether we have a soul. And we have arguments about whether reincarnation is real. And we have arguments about whether everything is just a momentary flash and then life is gone. Well, how could there be the separation of whatever it is that separates from the body container with so much ability and with so much consciousness, if it wasn't giving us a clue, a key? You are not just that body lying on the pillow.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, I agree with you. Let me see where I want to go here. We brought in the simulated model of the universe. I had a feeling that was going to come up because I think that is just beyond provocative. And I have to tell you, I have used that quote that you presented to me in one of our interviews by Tom Campbell. We are living in an entropy trainer for souls. That to me cuts to the heart of it, Linda, to tell you the truth.
Yes.
For all of the madness that we cannot reconcile for the life of us. Why are we suffering so much? Why do we live in a sea of paradoxes? Why is this so difficult? And that one powerful phrase that you presented to me from what Tom Campbell said might just begin to scratch the surface of what the heck is going on.
That's right. And why are there souls that truly care and cherish? There's a word that to me is significant. I cherish my cats. Yeah. I cherish my daughter. I cherish my brother. There is a feeling that is agape love. And agape love, the Greeks used to talk about it, which is completely different from sexual love. Agape love used to be stressed. And today on this planet, families are being torn apart by politics and where they can make money. And that the entire issue of priorities for life have been turned upside down. When Monsanto can make poisons that are destroying the bees and the pollinators and hurting humans and causing cancer, and yet Monsanto is raised up by Congress as being one of the companies to depend upon to put money into all of their pockets and do it year after year so that Monsanto is never reined in. And to me, it is a force against life.
Absolutely.
Why is that possible? How is that possible?
Entropy trainer for souls is the only thing that continues it in terms of the justification. I don't know. I do think that we are at a precipice. We are at a turning point. And I think that we have skin in the game in terms of our understanding the dynamic that you're talking about. Responsibility, the ability to respond. And that's what I believe that word really means. And I think that something is, whether you want to call it universe, something beyond, that is training us to respond and to let us know that if we don't, there will be hell to pay.
Yeah. And one of the things that is happening, more and more people, whether they're in the abduction syndrome, whether they're somebody who is a businessman, I am getting more credible, meaning the emails are well written, clearly educated people, handwritten or hand typed letters that still come in the mail, but they are intelligent and they are educated people. And they are saying, Linda, I have a palpable sense that something huge is coming. What is this feeling? Like the wires in the universe and the molecules of humanity are somehow connected and something is vibrating. What is this vibration about? What is coming that so many educated, intelligent people are writing and asking me as a reporter, do you have any information about what could be coming? Well, does this fall into this category that we're not alone in the universe, and that what is stacking up now is we are finally going to have that huge earthquake, and it's going to be global. We're not alone in this universe. We never have been. But what are the agendas and the intents of other intelligences, even those that may have been cohabiting on this planet with evolving primates for millions of years? And from their point of view, Earth is theirs.
Yeah.
We are the surface life to be harvested from. What happens when the revelation is we humans now understand we're not alone and that there are other alien intelligences cohabiting with us? What then happens when we don't get down on our knees anymore to anything that shows up with beams of light?
What happens?
Yeah, what happens? We are like adolescents that are going to begin. We're either going to stand up with adult maturity, with the ability to say to anything that's in front of us, I am not getting down on my knees to you as gods because I no longer perceive you as gods. I perceive you as what you really are. Other intelligences. That is the earthquake. And that is what we could be coming up against. But what will the event be that will make it clear to the whole planet?
Do you believe there will be an acute event? I think this is the big question, because I think we tend to think in terms of 9/11 being a demarcation point, that event, that was an acute event. Do you believe that what some people feel are coming, I'm one of them, by the way, this sense of foreboding that has been unrelenting for so long. But do you believe, Linda, that it will be one event, a series of events, a confluence of circumstances? What do you think?
It's an excellent question. I have pondered it. I ask this so often with people that I interview in the human abduction. Do they have dreams? Are they having vivid dreams? Have they had telepathic downloads? Interestingly enough, I would say from the people in the human abduction syndrome, the most common reaction, Linda, I have a lot of dreams about water, that the planet is going to be engulfed in water.
Oh, wow.
Well, what would it take? What would bring another Noah's flood?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. What would bring another Noah's flood? Because that's what people in the human abduction syndrome seem to sense and have vivid dreams. I don't have any mechanism. I don't understand how the world would be essentially flooded.
Yeah.
Well, do we discard and never bring up that question?
Right.
It's in the Genesis. Noah's flood is in the beginning of the Christian Bible.
That's right.
Yeah, and the idea that the planet was entirely engulfed in water and that it was punishment, and that only one human family was allowed to survive because all rest of Earth humanity was being punished for being so terrible by a divine force. Well, we go to church and buildings and we hear people called priests or preachers who will talk about Noah's flood, and we just it just goes off of everybody's back like, oh, well, that's just in the Bible.
That was then, not now.
what does that mean that
Right.
Noah's flood and punishment by a force is in the Bible? What does it really mean?
Right. In terms of a metaphorical value, or, well,
Is
what I,
is it literal? Is it literal?
well, yeah, well, what I think of in terms of the metaphor, because I think a lot of us, I don't know where you would look at the stories of the Bible and other religious texts for that matter and say, this is what I feel really happened versus this is a lesson that we need to know metaphorically. But I think of the planet being engulfed in water is really, there is no choice left but to cleanse and begin again.
Yeah.
We
And
have to wash away all the damage that has been done, atone, and begin from the beginning, a new Genesis.
but Alexis, who would be making
Who would be
that
making that decision? Well, you know what I think of? I have to bring this up because it's something about that conversation, Linda, that we had, 2 years ago at Contact in the Desert when we spoke of the simulated model of the universe. And you told the story, which I love, of Jerry Wills. And when he had his completely
Yeah.
anomalous experience and being confronted with this voice that said, "Ah, Earth," as if with recognition. I can almost quote the way you told the story. And
Yes.
in this story, he says that whomever this voice represented created the universe that we are in. And this idea of universes being nestled, something created the universe that they're in ad infinitum.
Right.
So in answer to your question, and I'm putting it out as a question back, could it be that element that created the simulation that would be making that decision to start a new set of software? I don't know.
Exactly. I have, in my own mind, I have done a thought exercise about that thinking. Is it possible that the divine field, which to me is the all that could possibly ever be, it is alpha to the omega, it is the infinite, but that it generates the way we would sit and think about something we wanted to test? And that if you have a divine field that wants to test something having to do with life force, and that life force in a billion infinite number of containers, what would the life force, the soul fiber, what would it end up being if it went through billions of iterations inside of billions of different containers? What would you have at the end? And that something that large could be what is happening, and it would then mean that each universe could have an overseer.
That's
huge
mind-boggling.
Yeah. I mean, this is where we're not capable. The human mind is not capable of going too much further in these thought exercises because we have absolutely no experiential range. We can think it, but all of this, even talking about a simulated universe and the possibility of a divine field playing out in infinity, an actual infinite number of possibilities in order to test what happens to different soul fabrics, that if anything that large were going on, we have been kept dumb and blind as evolving primates on little planet Earth, 2/3 water, since the beginning of standing up primates 2 million years ago. And that means something has deliberately kept us out of the awareness of what's going on. And if you're kept out of the awareness, is it because it's a territorial decision by conflicting intelligences, or does it mean that it is a divine choice? Something that set all this in motion did not want evolving primates on Earth to become conscious until a certain point. Are we now finally at that intersection? And if we are, is a total new maturity, would it help humans to evolve or not. And I think that's hanging in the balance. And that in the abductions, when you get over and over from military to professionals who say every communication that they have had in the last 2 or 3 years has been, if humanity does not evolve faster, you will not survive.
Agreed. Something, it seems, has been hell-bent on keeping us out of awareness, and yet, paradoxically, something has been hell-bent on bringing us into awareness.
Yes, exactly. And that conflict right there raises the big questions. Who, with which intent, is now trying to get Earth to that headline that we're not alone? Which side?
Right. This calls into the question, and this is the big one, and this is the one we're going to end on. Who or what is God? Is there all that is? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it is the question. It always is haunting me. I have always, because I have been saved from mortal danger, I should have been dead, and a blazing white cross a couple of times in my life has just appeared, and I am saved from mortal danger. And that affinity or that connection between what I feel is my soul and that white blazing cross is palpable to me, and that white blazing cross is what I think of when I talk about the divine field, that there is something that truly is compassionate and wants life to evolve and to survive, but that it has created, and this comes to this question, is it possible that a divine field can create universes in which there is pure evil and destruction and territoriality that destroys life? How can that which is divine create a universe or universes in which the very thing that it seems to want to destroy, evil, is in the universe manifest, causing yin and yang, dark and white, life and death, love and hate? How are those two reconciled in a universe made by God or a divine field? That to me is a conundrum that I personally am still wrestling with.
Right, as are many of us. And I have gone through my own, as you put it, aptly put it, thought experiment on questions like that. Those are the biggest questions. And I guess somehow, Linda, I've come to the conclusion. I always say, let us not fear exploring the mystery. I love the physicist Richard Feynman. I quote him all the time. It does not do harm to the mystery to know a little bit about it. But in that vein, we also have to reason that we very well may not have the answer to the full mystery, at least not in this lifetime. But that should not at all deter us from exploring it. And you've done it beautifully, by the way.
Well, thank you. I hope that I can keep doing all of this work for at least another 10 years with energy and strength, because I think that this decade going forward is the most critical in millennia.
I agree with you. And you have been an integral part in helping so many people, not just in getting a little closer to having their own thought experiments, but in even daring to explore along with you. So we cherish you for that.
Thank you.
We really do. Well, listen, we're going to close, but before we do, tell us what you've got coming up next. We already know I don't know how you do it. I really just don't know how I think you're bilocating. I have a feeling.
Well,
what's going on with you?
I am getting ready to get on an airplane November 8th and fly to Baltimore for the big Alien Con. It was so successful in Pasadena this past summer that they turned around and said, we'll do another Alien Con, which is related to Ancient Aliens. There's a group of us that have been in Ancient Aliens for the last 11 seasons, going to the 12th upcoming. And we are all gathering now in Baltimore on the East Coast. Often the East Coast has not had conferences like the West and the Midwest.
I know.
So I will be there 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and we are there to autograph. We are there to get photographs with the attendees. I will be doing panels. I'm going to be doing an update on my Is Artificial Intelligence an Existential Threat to Humanity? I think it's one of the most important subjects on the planet right now, and I'm doing a version that I'm calling 2019 Update. And that will be my major presentation in Baltimore. And then I am going to be in Philadelphia with my granddaughter, and my son-in-law.
Oh, great.
And I'm going to be speaking at the Cosmopolitan Club in Philadelphia in that week following Alien Con. And that gets through November. December, I'm hoping that it will be Earth Files, Coast, Phenomena Radio, sort of we'll call it the more normal circuit swings of my life, and getting ready to travel a lot in 2019, starting with Conscious Life Expo.
We'll see you there. Absolutely.
And, yes, and then I just have every single month to the fall of 2019. Including I've been asked to be in Manchester in July of 2019, where I received that Stellar Award 2 years ago. I've been asked to come back and speak, and I am looking forward to it. I thought that the Manchester audience was one of the most enthusiastic, hep, full of energy audiences I have ever had the pleasure to speak before. And it is as if some of the areas of the planet, there are pockets like Manchester and Liverpool, where it wasn't just the age of the Beatles, that is a population full of people who are already beyond the headline, Are We Alone? Yes, we're not alone in this universe.
I would agree. And as my audience knows, we just returned from the Manchester area along with a few other hot spots in England. And I would agree with you there. I don't think they realize how open and inquisitive they are to this phenomenon, because they're sitting on one side of the fence and they think we're the ones that are hip to all of this and exploring in different ways. But I don't know. I would disagree with that. Very enthusiastic group that I met up with over there. So, well, you've got a packed schedule. We will be seeing you for sure at Conscious Life Expo. We may even be in Manchester for the Awakening conference that you'll be attending. But it's always great for us to cross paths. It's just such a treat always to spend time with you, Linda.
And thank you, Alexis, for reaching out to so many people all of the time. It is really important.
Thank you. Love you.
And I love you. And our kitties.
And our kitties, too. I hope we'll make sure by the time they get to this point in the interview, they will definitely have seen our beloved animal companions. And let's close on this. Whenever you doubt that love is authentic, that we can love authentic, just look at these precious, precious, precious creatures and know that unconditional love exists. And if they can be in that, live in that way, then we can too. So let's get there. Let's do it quickly. All right.
Amen. Amen.
All right. Signing off for now. Thanks, as always, everyone in the Higher Journeys audience for joining us today, and we will talk to you soon. Take care.